werewolves, lycans, vampires, elves, the Anunnaki, angels, demons, Krampus, cat people, dog people. I've been wanting to talk about this for quite some time. So, I'd like to welcome everybody who showed up for the live stream today in the chat. My name's JayDreamerZ, and today we're talking about vampires and werewolves. Vampires versus werewolves specifically, and why there seems to be a connection between the two. So, we're going to talk about a few of these things today. I do want to thank everyone for your support. I did put a little banner up here as to some things that are happening. And I do appreciate your support throughout the video. Now, I'm going to be sharing a lot of information today. So if you're watching in the future, I recommend fast forwarding at 2 times the speed. That's what I do. Lots of information to go over. We're going to talk about the word origins for werewolf and vampire and things like that. And we're really going to get down to the bottom of things. Let's start off by asking ourselves, what is a werewolf? What do you think about when you think of a werewolf? You know, typical things come to mind. But basically, today, a werewolf is a cartoonified version of an ancient truth. An ancient truth that everybody knew and understood to be common knowledge at the time. All right, so what do they have? Werewolves, right? They have big eyes, big ears, big teeth, big nose, long claws. They're allergic to silver, as is about 10 to 15% of the rest of the population of you all. Interesting to think about. Food for thought. Werewolves are humanoid with animal-like features. It's not the opposite. They're not animals with human-like features. They're considered immortal. That's huge. That's so huge, right? We're going to talk about the whole immortality concept between werewolves and vampires and why that's so crucial. Okay? Because if we're just talking about some kind of an animal or whatever, you know, it shouldn't be immortal. It should just be an animal. Even if it's a person animal or whatever, it should not be immortal, right? But they are immortal. Typically. I mean, they can be killed and stuff, but we say immortal in comparison to human life, right? All right, so what else? They're considered immortal. They're strongly associated with the moon. Interesting to me, because that's where they're from. We'll talk about that. They're typically really tall, and they have bloodlust. I would call that plasma possession. And they've been depicted as the mortal enemies of the vampires. What's up, everybody in the chat? Hey, thanks for all of your awesome vibes and contributing and stuff. I appreciate you. All right, so we know about the cartoon version, right? We know what's going on with the cartoon version. We've cartoonified our ancient truths. Now, let me preface this video as early as I can by saying none of what I'm talking about is complete fantasy, utter fantasy, ridiculous, impossible. None of these things that I'm talking about are those things. The things that I'm talking about are in the realm of the real and have been believed in and throughout time by culture after culture, religion after religion, and belief system after belief system, from place to place around our world for hundreds and thousands of years. These topics have been discussed in a very serious manner because they were believed in and they were well known at the time. Now, maybe that's not the world we live in today. We don't have to watch out for vampires and werewolves like walking about and, you know. Does that mean that they don't exist? Is that how we should talk about the dodo? You know, people once wrote and spoke about the dodo. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but you get my point, right? My point is that we find the roots of fantasy to be reality. It's where it springs from. It's where it comes from. And we would do ourselves and our ancestors a disservice not to look into the stories that have been passed on to us. Not just stories, but accounts and histories and warnings and cautions, etc., and so on and so forth. So we know about the cartoon version of the werewolf. We're going to start with the werewolf, then we're going to get into the vampires. Because I have actually done videos on vampires in the past. I want to talk about the werewolves, right? Werewolves are a huge pop culture icon and have been for quite some time. Let's tidy him up a bit. Can I? I give myself permission. Boom. Let's do it. There he is. All right, sweet. So werewolves have been around for some time. This is typically what you think of when you think of a werewolf, right? Some just tall guy that has like a torso of like a wolf, but he's got like human arms and somehow wolf claws. Can you see how this is a caricature? It's a caricature. Just like if you go on a trip somewhere and they draw a little cartoon version of you that looks like you, but everything's exaggerated. That's what this is right here. As are vampires, as are so many of our ancient myths and legends and stories. So this is what we have. We've got the wolf, or the werewolf. Now, werewolf, I'll save you guys a lot of time, translates into man-wolf, okay? Man-wolf. We're going to actually get into... I'm more interested in the word wolf, so let's check out where that comes from. Why do we name... If this is related to something actual, why? Why would we relate a person or a bipedal humanoid-looking thing with a creature that's not? Right? I mean, and I say we as in humanity throughout time. I don't mean humanity as in during this time right now and all of our pop culture and, you know, the modern way that things are. I'm taking into account all of history, our writings, our findings, our stories. So werewolf translates into man-wolf. The animal that we call wolf... Thanks, Jake. Jake says I rock. Thank you, Jake. The animal that we call wolf, it's technically... All these animals, even including us, we're all named in Latin names, officially. Everything has a Latin name. So if you look up the Latin name of wolf, it says Canis lupus. Canis lupus. Okay, well, let's break that down. Let's figure out exactly what a wolf is and where does the werewolf come from. We got to break down the word wolf. So it's named Canis lupus. Canis translates into devourer, essentially, which is what a dog is, what a wolf is, right? Different types of animals that just devour their food when they come upon it, or their prey. And it implies hunter, which normally is what the animal does. Normally this animal hunts, right? It goes after its prey, it hunts it down, and it kills it and eats it, right? That's actually where we get the word for hound. Hound, hunt. The hunt, the hunter, hound. That's where it comes from. So, what does lupus mean? Canis lupus, right? That's the real name for a wolf. If you look it up on Wikipedia, it'll say Canis lupus on it. Canis translates into devourer, but what does lupus mean? And how is it connected to the legends of the werewolf? Well, let's look at the etymology of the word wolf itself, okay? In Latin, the word wolf is lupus, or lupi, L-U-P-U-S, or L-U-P-I. In Greek, it's lycos. See, as you can see, Canis lupus right there. So check this out. In Latin, the word for wolf is lupus. In Greek, it's lycos. Both start with L. That's interesting. Followed up by a vowel. Followed up by a P and a K. We got to break this down and figure this out. Now, in Old Slavonic, it's Voluku. That's the name. Instead of lupus or lycos in Latin and Greek, in Old Slavonic, it's Voluku. Voluku. Or Proto-Indo-European, we've got Woluku. Woluku. Now, there's different slight pronunciations based on dialect and accent over time. This word has changed a bit. So to figure out what it originally meant and why we apply it to some sort of a bipedal human type and android-like being, human-like being, why did we associate this word with it? Well, to find that out, we have to dig a little bit deeper. Check this out. Wolf. I want you guys to read this if you can. I'll read it as well. It says, this is the etymology for wolf, okay? I use a website called etymonline.com. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but hey, I find it useful. Old English for wolf is wolfish person or devil. Whoa, isn't that interesting? Whoa, how do we get to devil? Why is wolf all of a sudden associated with devil? Devil is like some sort of an evil ancient being that warred against an angel. It's connected to the word wolf. Let's check it out. So from Proto-Germanic, wolfaz. Now check this out. This is super interesting. See that AZ at the end? Ooh, we're going to get into that. wolfas. The source of also Old Saxon wolf, Old Norse ulfr, or for you guys who are movie lovers, A Knight's Tale, Ulfric, right? He's the wolf. It's Sanskrit, Virkas, Avestan, Vekra, Albanian, Uluk, Old Church Slavonic, Vuluku. Do you see the connections here? I don't want to go over all of them, but we have to break it down to its simplest form. In all of these words, it's either two letters. It's LP or LK. Now, let me show you what I mean. Actually, I'm going to skip over it. Let me do some screen sharing real quick. That'll work. We will come back to that. Boom. All right, so here's what I'm talking about. I just want to give you guys a visual example so you can see it. Oh, let me make this so you can actually see it. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so check this out. So this is the root of the word wolf, which is lupus or lucus. So we've got L. Wait a minute. I've got my dark mode on, I think. Maybe that's it. Oh, no, I erased it. My bad. Okay, so, oh, God. See how they put that ad up there and it's just totally a white banner because they know I'm using dark mode. Isn't that insane? So I have to click on the ad. All right, so the root of the word, this is where the word lichen comes from as well. Like-on. Lik-on. Look-on. Okay, so it's L-K or L-P. That's the root of lupus, lichen, what was it? Leucos, right? All of these. So, what does this break down into? This word right here is the original. It morphed into this pronunciation down here, right? Just like we do with many of our letters, like the P sound sometimes is an F sound, like phone, right? Or phonograph or things like that. Our letters change with dialect and accent over time. So originally it was more of an LK. Luck. Luck. Look. It doesn't really matter what the vowel sound is in between because they're interchangeable. So when you go back further in time, it's just consonants in two letters right next to each other. Those are the first words. First word pictures to convey a message. All right, I want to get back off of this real quick. I just want to give you a quick example and show you. This is what we're looking at. So, look. Leak, lichen, like on. Anyways, okay, I could get into that a bit more, but right now I just kind of want to take us back to the pictures. Boom. All right, sweet. Okay, so the word LK or LK, right? Whatever that sound is, whatever letter represents that sound as it goes back in time, goes back to lux or lux. Lach, like Robin of Locksley, Lux, 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 Lex Luthor. All these words mean light. See that right there? Lux, light. Well, this is weird. Why are we calling something that looks like a dog something that has to do with being shiny or light or bright? We'll get to it. So, if you look up looks and the origin of the word light, we come to Luke. Literally Luke, like the name Luke, okay? Proto-Indo-European root meaning is light or brightness. Informs all part of illuminate, elucidate, illumination, illustration, Leia, Luke's sister. Leukemia, leuco, light. It all means light, brightness, radiant energy. Link, right there. See that? For you video game lovers, means light. That's why they name them that. Hey, Henry Langelin just donated through the super chat and says, "Get my sound bag." Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I wish I could go into more detail about that, but because I'm still in court and stuff, you know, I'm just gonna let it be until everything's done. Thank you so much. All right. Down here, I want to scooch this up a bit because I want to be able to, you guys to be able to check this out. It's the hypothetical source of the evidence for its existence provided by the Sanskrit rokat, which means shines, or Armenian lois. Lois also means light. You wonder why these people are named these things in the cartoons and TV shows? Lucin, Lukos, it means bright. shining, and white even. That's super interesting. Why are we naming this devil dog of some sorts after something that's white and bright or shining or light? Let's move on. I think I beat a dead wolf on that one. All right. So why are we naming it after this, right? Well, how did we get from this to a man-like or human-like being that looks like it's got the head of this and other parts, right? Let me get back to my notes. One sec. Okay, so we talked about the etymology of the word wolf and how it's related to lupus or lycos, and the us and the os at the end, just so you know, the suffix, okay, that's actually just means strong. It means strength. That's all it means. So that's why the United States is called the U.S. affectionately, because it's strong, okay? The Wizard of Oz is the strong wizard. The Azir, which we'll talk about, which are very much related to all of this, are the strong gods of old, the very powerful ones, okay? Okay, so the root of all of these words is LK or LP. Depending on dialect and accent over time, the K sound of the Proto-Indo-European dialects changed to that of the P sound in some words. The word LK conveys shining, light, and illuminated, etc. The prefix U, W, and V, if those are in the front of a word, they're all the same exact word picture, and they mean hook. And this is actually, I talk about this in my my video called The Secret of the Elves. The hook, which is the U, the W, or the V, the Vav, etc., conveys of the, or attached to, or by extension associated with, which at times was added as a suffix to the end of a word. So instead of being a prefix, they put it at the end, sometimes both, as you'll see, possibly giving it a type of generational redundancy that can convey the meaning those who are of, those who were of, or, more simply translated, related to. So simply put, lupus and lucus, in their many variants, mean those of the light, the shining ones, the illuminated, and other inferences to light. So, I'm going to get to the elves here in a bit. This is a picture of the Azir, by the way, fighting the Vanir. The Azir and the Vanir we'll get to in just a bit. It's the war between the houses, the oldest story of the house war, the family war. While we have cartoonified the word to mean really big, savage dog, when studying the origin, we find an altogether different story. Now we have another piece to the puzzle by studying its etymology, the word origin to the word wolf, right? So, how do we connect those of the light, that puzzle piece that we just got, by researching the origin of the word wolf? Lupus, lucus, lux. How do we connect that with the word wolf itself? How did we connect those two? It's simple. The word wolf begins with the prefix W. Remember? That's the hook. Ooh, that's the W. W. And it means of thee. So that leaves us with Ulf. Simple. We've already covered in my Secret of the Elves video, but in short, it's the word elf, which really means El, or Ilu, or Ilv, or Ilf, which means of the El, of the gods, of the mighty leaders, of the powerful leaders. That's what elf means. So, elf is redundancy, a generational redundancy, which means they are of those who are of the elves, or related to. How are they related to the elves? How is a wolf related to an elf? I ask you that. All right, let's talk about that. In short, hold on, let's recap over wolves before we get into elves. And I'm going to make the connection here in a minute. In short, werewolves are cartoonified, poorly drawn caricatures of immortal beings who came down from the sky. Their kind splitting into two groups and warring amongst themselves. The suffix at the end of lupus or lukos is spelled AZ and OZ and other variants, which means very strong. And it's the root of the word azir. Az. The azir. Us. Az. The ear part just is like putting an S on it. It just makes it plural. Azir, right? Many Az, many strong ones. The Azir, half of the family of the Nordic gods, known as the very strong ones or the Azir. Who did they war with? Well, they warred with the Vanir, which means the beautiful ones. Now, why is there a distinction between the beautiful gods and the not so beautiful gods? Let's take a look at it, right? If the werewolves are the very strong ones of an immortal race of alien beings, who do you suppose the beautiful ones may be in comparison? Right? History reveals that the two classes of gods were always related and of the same family root. The vampires were the beautiful ones, naturally. Our modern standard of beauty comes from the beauty that we beheld when looking upon the younger gods who were placed in charge of humanity. Those younger gods, now remember, we're talking about immortals, okay? So when I say younger, don't think our age, okay? They could be 300 years old and equates to however old you may be out there watching, okay? They're still kids, basically. These younger gods, the fair-skinned immortals, went through puberty much later in life than we do. Thus, those who were allowed to rule over us were the children and adolescents of the family. We're going to get into Grandpa there in just a bit. These are the youth of the immortals. They had little to no facial hair, never needing to shave. Their eyes looked a bit larger, as does a baby's before it's fully matured into its grown body. They were said to grow giant in stature as well. And I'm talking about the old gods, the elves, the angels, whatever label you'd like to put on them, those beings. Big. They were in our eyes forever young, but freshly trapped in this new world, they would eventually lose their immortality, aging much faster than they were accustomed to, albeit still very slow in comparison to us mortals. So what happens to an immortal as it leaves puberty? It is known that the nose and the ears never stop growing because of their composition. So our ears and our noses, they just keep growing. Like if you get to be an old man or an old woman, you will notice your ears and your nose got a lot bigger over time. Now imagine a being who has lived for over 1,000 years or more. Elves have those long pointy ears, and they're the younger ones. Imagine the elders. Werewolves are those elders, possibly. They have long, pointy ears. Their noses are really big and noticeable, like a dog's, and their gums may have receded to a point where their teeth appear to be extra long. I would also venture to say that a few hundred years after puberty has taken full effect, their body begins to grow hair, just as ours does. All over for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Could this be what the Bigfoot sightings really are? Take a look at this this word over here. I want to show you this, right? Now, over here we've got, this is Krampus, okay? So I full on support the idea that Krampus is an elder god, just like Santa is the leader of the younger elves, possibly. Krampus is one of the older ones. He's one of the hairy ones, grew out his horns. Now, if you stick around, this is going to be a long video because I have a lot of info, like I said. If you stick around, I'll actually show you an elf. I put it together, but it's an elf changing into a werewolf, or a younger god changing into an elder god, okay? And we'll get over that here in just a bit. I'm just checking my notes, one sec. So, could this be what we call Bigfoot, right? Maybe that's what that is. I think so, maybe. Maybe this is what, of our wild dogs that we call wolves. Maybe that's why we call them wolves, right? Maybe we looked at that animal, the devourer, and we named it after a being that looked similar. Now, have we ever done that in the past? No! Mankind's never named our gods after animals that we saw because we were trying to figure out what they looked like, right? We have. time and time again. The fish gods, the dog gods, the bird gods, etc., and so on and so forth. Does that mean that's really what they were? Could be. There might be another explanation, though. So, the ram, right? This creature that has horns coming out of it. I want to actually get into this real quick and teach you about the word ram, right? It says Old English, ram. That's how it sounds to me. Male sheep. Also, battering ram, instrument for crushing, blah, 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 blah. Now, as the zodiac sign earlier, Ram, R-O-M. Remember, those vowels don't really mean much. R-O-M is the same as R-A-M. That's pretty crucial. Ram and Ram, same thing. Why do I find this to be interesting? Because look at this guy. Look at Krampus. Look at these older gods that are typically have something to do with a bull or a ram or something with horns. Even the devil. The devil has horns. Everybody knows that. Moses had horns. Did you know that? The Bible literally says he had horns. That's why he's drawn in old pictures and drawings and carvings and stuff. Boom. He's got horns on his head. Why? Not because they were trying to make fun of him or anything, because that's literally what he looked like. A humanoid with horns. Now, I don't know about all this leg stuff down here, because, like, basically they always put them, like, with, like, these normal legs, but then way up on their tippy toes. I don't understand. Pan. Pan is also one of the father gods, the elder gods. And he has horns, and he's furry. Hellboy. This is a super good example. Now imagine Hellboy is just a young elf before they start adding all this hair. He goes through puberty, right? Ages, starts getting older. His horns would get bigger and bigger and bigger as he goes. He gets more and more hair everywhere. He's just going through puberty. But he looks a little bit different than what we were used to seeing. Those younger gods who are always in the limelight with their beautiful looks and their dashing appearances. They looked a lot different. And different in our world means scary. Sometimes I wonder if, because there are legends of the werewolves who can shapeshift, right? So I'm not putting it past technology. Remember, if the werewolves, as I suppose, are related and just elder gods to the elves themselves, and I'm just using those words interchangeably. All they mean is those phantazoids, those bipedal beings that came down from the sky, aliens, angels, whatever you want to call them, demons. To me, they're all the same. Different types, different classes, but all the same. So we come up with different names for them. So I wonder if they have some sort of technology, being that they're very, very old and advanced, right? Like a beautification charm. Maybe they're getting old and ugly or something, and they have some sort of a technology like this hologram of Tupac that lets you see something different. And then they can shapeshift instantly by turning off that technology. Possibly. I'm just throwing it out there. Right? That's the age-old devil in the movies, right? This dude is just an elf. He's just an older elf. He's starting to get long horns and stuff like that. And I also wonder if this is where the Minotaur symbolism comes from as well, right? The Minotaur doesn't look like a centaur, doesn't have the body of a bull or anything like that. It's got the body of a man. People knew, or a human, I should say, okay? They knew that this being walked upright, whatever it was. And they knew it had huge horns. And they knew it had hair, or some hair, or it was muscular or not, and so they drew it like that. This guy's really interesting, okay? This one is, his name is, what's his name? Something Wolf. Man, I totally forgot this guy's name. Steppenwolf. That was his name, right? Steppenwolf. And he's got horns. And he's a wolf from space. I mean, he's called a wolf, right? And then Superman, in this movie, okay, actually represents the elven race, or the powerful gods. Now, you have to remember, those angelic beings had superpowers. You can call it miracles, you can call it magic, you can call it whatever you want to. We all know those beings that come down from the sky can do stuff we cannot do. They have superpowers, essentially, okay? I believe that gets into the plasma apocalypse and the weakened gravitational field, and those beings that had a stronger gravitational field in whatever world they just came from, they come down into ours, they are now superheroes, because our polarity reverses, and so our gravity weakens once it's restored. And then it gets stronger and stronger. So that's why you see Superman, the leader of the elves, or the representative of the elves, beating down on the wolf guy, because this is their family brawl. Steppenwolf. Okay, so what I'd like to do is go over a couple of these notes that I have here real quick. Oh, Lene's in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, finally, I missed you. Yay, I can chat. Thanks for opening it to everybody. You're super welcome. I'm glad you guys enjoy it. All right, so let's get back to these notes here. So we were talking about what happens with like a vampire. These are old depictions of actual werewolves too. Do you see that? Right? It's just a human looking guy that's got really long hair and then pointy ears, etc. Here's an example of your ears. Okay, here's a younger picture of the guy's ear, and then when he's older, look how much bigger it's gotten just in that small amount of time, and his nose as well, starting to droop. Isn't that interesting? See how big? I don't know if it's photoshopped, I don't know if it's real, but I've seen it in my own life, so it corroborates what I'm trying to say. Big old nose, big old ears, right? As they get older. Big old nose, big old ears, right? Now this is just a cartoonified example, right? Or maybe it's not. I think it is. All right, so we talked about the origin of the word wolf, Lucas. It's also where the word lycanthropy comes from. Okay, so the just means of the, right? Or those of the light. These are those of the light. Can you believe that? Why would we call them that? Why in the world would we call them those of the light? Big old hairy animal-like looking things, right? Hey, I just got a donation. Ken Mueller donated and says, you were just educating your son, right? Yes, absolutely, totally. As I always will. And thank you for your donation. Okay, so let's talk about this. I want to point out some examples of these types of gods. First, the werewolves. The king of Lycaon of Arcadia was changed into a wolf by Zeus. That's one of the oldest records, not the oldest one. Of course, we've got the big bad wolf story, right? Goldilocks goes in there's the big bad wolf. Not the Three Little Pigs one, although that's exactly the same thing, right? But the Goldilocks one. She says, my, what big eyes you have. My, what big ears you have, etc. She's pointing out these particular features, like she's looking at a caricature drawing of some being that really exists, or at least has been said to really exist. Here's another interesting concept. Let me get back to a picture of the werewolf here. Well, I'll talk about Beauty and the Beast a little bit later, but there were no kid werewolves. There's no kid werewolves. There's no child werewolf. Okay, this is supposed to be some kind of disease that just turns you into one or whatever. That's all cartoonified, and in my mind, it's a bit fast forwarded to kind of speed up the action. But there were no kid werewolves. They can only become werewolves after going through puberty. That's huge. I mean, you can watch that in the movie Teen Wolf, and they touch on that, and many other places as well. But they can only become wolves after they go through puberty, just like a young elf can only become an elder or a werewolf or a light being, lycan, whatever you want to call them, by going through puberty. They have to. That's when they start growing hair and stuff. And on top of that, they have entered down into our world where their lifespan is quickened all of a sudden. When the polarity reversal stops in our world and our electromagnetic barrier that keeps out all the bad stuff goes back up, they're trapped inside. Pressure starts to build up, the gravity starts to slowly return over time, and our energy starts to get siphoned from the life inside of our world. We use it all up. So they start to die quicker, which makes them age quicker. And this is a big deal to the younger elven race. They don't want that. They don't want to look like that so soon. They thought they had thousands of years. They don't now. So we'll talk about that too in a minute. Let's see. Let me skip to this. In the early modern period, werewolf belief also spread through the New World. That would be the United States. So what this is saying right here from Wikipedia is that the whole United States, in general, believed in werewolves. Belief in werewolves developed into the parallel belief in witches. Where'd that go? In the course of the late Middle Ages... Hey, Onrod! Just donated. And says, I'll send something more substantial next week. Hey, thanks, Onrod. I appreciate you. And I got your message earlier, too, so thank you for that. So, basically, people believed in werewolves. They also believed in witches. Like, it says right here, like the witchcraft trials as a whole, The trial of supposed werewolves emerged in what is now Switzerland, right? In the early 15th century, and it spread throughout Europe in the 16th, peaking in the 17th and subsiding in the 18th century. What is this saying in normal people terms, in layman's terms? That most of the European world at one time literally, truthfully, factually, and actually believed in the concept of something called a werewolf. Whatever form that took, they believed in it. That was their truth. They knew this. They held trials. They went to court to accuse people of being a werewolf. So, keep that in mind. This was not fantasy. This was not fiction. This was not garbage. It wasn't lies to just tell your kids to spook them into doing what they're told. This was reality up until recent history. The persecution of the werewolves and the associated folklore, that just means lore of the folk or our stories, is an integral part of the witch hunt phenomenon. Now, this is a picture from Zeus. This is supposed to be Zeus over here, turning this guy into a wolf. Interesting, too, because it looks like almost like he has wings because that thing's draped over himself. But is that what a wolf looks like? No, it's not. So I don't know what Zeus did to him, but he definitely didn't turn him into a canine, right? He gave him a different appearance. This is symbolic, right? Just because we have these stories and we know that there's truth in them, and full of there's so much ample truth in these metaphors and stories, just like how Jesus taught and stuff. We would do ourselves a disservice to go the other extreme and just completely believe everything about them is true. That somebody can be bitten by one of these things and they just in 10 seconds change into this thing and they start running around. I don't know if that's a good idea to believe in all of that, but to take these things with a grain of salt and to find their origins, to find their similarities, to find the truths in our cultures, in our myths, in our religions, in our architecture, our archaeology. This one is of interest to me. This is a carving of a wolf, a she-wolf, who is letting these two human babies suckle and get milk. These two babies are known as Romulus and Remus. Remember how I said the word ram was interesting? Ram? Well, this is where the Romans come from. This is their origin story. Romulus and Remus, these two twin beings, okay, these early on twin beings, basically gods, they are gods, are the founders of the whole of Roman society. And the story goes that they were abandoned, grew up, these twins, and they were raised by a wolf, by a she-wolf. Now that she-wolf has gone by different names over time as well. But isn't that interesting? The Ram children, children of the ram. There's a story of them and this wolf god or goddess. It's because it's connected to real life. The werewolf myth became integrated with the local history of Arcadia. We talked about Arcadia in my other videos as well. The place of the arch, right? The arcade region of Greece. Here, Zeus was worshipped as a Lycian Zeus or a wolf Zeus. Now, was he really a wolf? Or did Zeus just start to look like a wolf or a cat or a dog or whatever it is that we see over time? In 380 BC, Greek philosopher Plato told a story of the Republic about the protector turned tyrant of the shrine of Lycian Zeus. In the short passage, the character Socrates remarks, "The story goes that he who tastes of one bit of human entrails minced with those of the other victim is inevitably transformed into a wolf." So this is not comic books that I'm reading. This is this is not a script from a movie. This is from human history that humans wrote down, that we have built and founded our school systems and our academics upon. These stories of these ancient ones that we show zero respect for anymore and cast off all of their stories as if they're gibberish and nonsense. They're not. I like this. I like how they portray the wolf man, right? I just wanted, some of these pictures I just put in there just because I wanted to. Chewbacca! Chewbacca also, to me, kind of represents this in the whole Star Wars thing. You know, each one of those aliens represents something. I also liked this picture as well, because this guy drew the wolf-like creature having 6 fingers. And he drew him with pointy ears. And he didn't have to have like big old snarly teeth or anything. He just looks like something that I could imagine an elf would turn into after going through puberty. Then, of course, we've got these stories of these shapeshifters and whatnot, and how they were able to put charms on people so that they didn't see them for what they really look like. This is actually a sweet movie. I highly recommend it. It's called Waxwork, and it's freaking awesome. But anyways, this is one version. This is how you could perceive a werewolf, okay? In your mind right now, because you're not face to face with one, all you have is your imagination. This is how you could choose to see one. Or you could choose to see one like this. It's exactly the same thing. It's the same thing. It just depends on what light it's cast in. Does it have your best interest at heart or not? That's what makes it truly evil or good in the eyes of individuals. Now let's take a look at this picture. I'm sure a lot of people would immediately be like, oh, it's Bigfoot, right? Well, is it? Maybe it is. But maybe this is also a few other things, like some sort of a wolf god, some sort of an aged old elf that has a huge cone head, and he started growing hair and beards and all kinds of stuff, and he's just an old freaking elf. I mean, really, I think there should be horns, because I believe these creatures most likely had horns. And if you stick around, we're going to talk about how horns are a very real possibility and reality in our present day world for humans. In case you think that's just ridiculous and there's no, it's so cartoon, it's so fake, no one could ever have horns growing out of them. I've never seen a human with horns. You're going to today. And with that, I'm actually going to take a break, because like I said, we got a lot of subject matter to cover in this video. So I'm going to give everyone a chance to go to the bathroom and stuff, as I will myself. We'll take a couple minute break here, and we'll come back and keep going. I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, I'm super sorry. Somebody told me there's no audio whenever I did the commercial break. Ah, no way. Thank you for letting me know. Man, I super appreciate it. I'm going to totally fix that. But hey, we're back from our little break. That's just a little ad that I have for my book that I wrote. So let's continue. Let's trudge on, right? We're talking about werewolves and vampires, the lycans, the origin of the word wolf, which is luk or loop, right? Depending on how you pronounce it, which means light, being of light. It has something to do with light or being illuminated, right? So we figure out and we make a connection that the word wolf, elf, is just of the elven race, of the elves, right? They're related to the elves. How are they related to the elves? I theorize that they're related to the elves, that they are their elders. They're the elders of the elves. Or this is what happens when you have an elf who's trapped in our world and they no longer are immortal. They have a countdown. The moment that they land into our world, boom, the clock begins. They're starting to age. They're starting to get older. All right, so let's pick back up where we left off. Hey, check that out. Ease Central Soldiers says, I've been here for 3 years watching you teach, and I'm subscribed for life. Hey, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. It's nice to meet you guys. Honestly, all of you. All right, so let's trudge on. Let's keep on going. So, a few other tips we talked about Romulus and Remus. I highly encourage you guys to check out etymonline.com and just type in these words, these root words, smaller words that you can think of. Usually, they're all related. There's also this show called Raised by Wolves. I don't know if somebody put that in the chat already, but Raised by Wolves does not have a single wolf in it, interestingly enough, right? There are no wolves. I've seen the whole show. There's no wolf in the whole show that I've seen, that I can remember. And they're certainly not raised by the wolves. What are they raised by? They're raised by these alien beings, these androids. Android the word android comes from ander, which means man-like or human-like, essentially, or man. And then oid means ish, basically. Ander-oid means humanish. That's what it means. So they're raised by androids, or these humanish or human-like beings. Interesting, right? There's Michael Jackson. Why does he have a werewolf in there? Oh, it's just all related to scary stuff for some reason. It could be. But why did they choose Michael Jackson, who's the leader of this production, to be a werewolf instead of being a vampire? Or they wanted him to be on the top. They wanted to show that he's the leader. This is another ancient depiction of a vampire. Now, I would say this one is probably not as, to me, beautiful looking as the regular vampires are. But as you can see, they start to get long fingers, possibly because they just let their nails grow. I don't know. There could also be things you have to keep in mind. When these beings come down into our world, they have their own standards of beauty and their own conditions that they consider to be normal. It might be normal for all of them to grow their fingernails out super long. But he's got the long pointy ears, sort of the pointy eyebrows that go up into a sort of little mini horn right there. And then there's these guys, right? I'm switching gears just for a minute. I'm going to shift back and forth between the two, okay? Now we're talking about vampires. Is this a magician or is this a vampire? Oh, shoot. I didn't mean to do that. Let me go back down here. Is it a magician or is it a vampire? Which one is it? Well, this is actually a magician, right? But what's the difference between a magician and a vampire? Dang, I keep pulling the whole thing down. There we go. Okay, it's the same. If you look at it, the dress is all the same. It's the black and white of the Illuminati or the illuminated beings or whatnot, which I believe represents space travel, which I did a whole video about that, or being out there in the fractalverse and seeing the dark worlds and the light, etc. It's checkerboard. But these guys have their popped collars, they've got the cape, they've got their power, their stick of power, whatever you want to call it, magic wand, and they've got their top hats. Now, why do you suppose they wear top hats? Why would they want to wear an extra large, extra long, extra tall hat when they kind of look like us? I'll give you a hint. It's because they wanted to cover up their long, elongated skulls or cone heads, right? All right, let me see if I have everything else. Oh, Steppenwolf, right? Okay, remember I showed you that one dude, Steppenwolf from the DC universe, okay? He was in that movie where all the DC heroes came together and they all fought Steppenwolf, right? Now, Steppen means it's the same as Steven. If your name is Steven out there, Stephen essentially translates into the word crowned. Well, what does crown mean? When we put a crown on someone's head, crown comes from horn. Horn. It comes from the word horns. The horns on the head. We didn't have horns on our head, so we had to put horns on our head to represent that we now are like those who were the horned gods who ruled while they were here. So that's how we, in turn, passed that on, that tradition on, that symbolism on, to our leaders, and we put coronas on them, or crowns, or corns, or horn. They put horns on them. We call it a crown. So that's what it means. Steppen wolf means crowned wolf. Well, what's a crowned wolf? A crowned wolf is a wolf with horns on his head, right? I'm going to get to this dude here in just a bit. Gmork. Gmork is actually, I don't know if I have a picture of Gmork quite yet, but he's the wolf in the Neverending Story. These are just some side examples. We've got Gmork, right? And we've got Lupercalia. There's actually a festival called Lupercalia. That's the festival of the wolf, or the wolfman, or the lycan, or the werewolf. It's literally a whole holiday for that being. Let's see. We've got people born with horns. Might as well check that one out. So, we talked about how the werewolves have horns. This is an interesting picture of the guy has like superpowers. I think it's from Teen Wolf, like a remake of Teen Wolf. But he can jump super high. Why do you think these beings, these vampires and werewolves and stuff, can jump off of buildings and land like that without getting hurt? Well, their structure is different than ours, and they're in a different environment than what we are used to. This environment is weak to them. It's a weak gravitational pull. They can jump off of a building and survive because they've got strong muscles and bones that will allow them to land safely. Unlike beings who are born into that environment, who are very weak in comparison, they couldn't jump off of that building. But a vampire can. And a werewolf could. Look at that super jump from the werewolf. That's insane, right? Why do we give them those abilities? Just because it's random and that it's just fun? We could do any abilities. It's always the same ones. The reason these same abilities, for the most part, keep popping up is because they're ingrained in our culture. Throughout our world, the idea of these super beings being able to like jump from rooftop to rooftop or from tree branch to tree branch has a real origin to it. And that's because of the weakened gravitational pull. Let's see, imps. No. I'm gonna actually start screen sharing. I want to show you guys examples because both the elven race and the werewolves have horns, traditionally. We can cartoonify them with or without. Like, for example, you don't put horns on Bigfoot, you know what I mean? Or whatnot. Is it this one? Yes, I think so. Okay, so some people may think to themselves, oh, well, I don't know why we draw people with horns. People can't really have horns. These beings can't have horns on them. We just put them on there to make them look scary over time. Did we really? Now, that's reverse cartoonification. Now we're applying cartoonification to something that may not be. It actually might be real. It might be the reality behind it. So let's check it out. Can a humanoid grow a horn? Well, here's an article. A 100-year-old Chinese woman grows a horn in her forehead. Just one day, out of the blue, just started growing a horn. An elderly Chinese woman has stunned her family and fellow villagers by growing from her forehead a horn that resembles a goat's. Interesting. Let's check out some pictures. I'm not going to go over the whole article or anything. You can easily Google it. But she has a horn literally growing out of her face. So, it's called a cutaneous horn. See that right there? Cutaneous. Let's go ahead and do a quick little Google search on cutaneous horns. Now, all I'm going to do is just pull up images. The first ones that pop up. Cutaneous horns. These are literally horns that grow out of people's bodies. Human beings today. Okay, I know it's kind of gross, like we're not used to seeing. Plus, not only that, these horns are, they're growing in all kinds of weird spots and stuff. Probably because they're just anomalies that are contained within our DNA, and they activate anomalously in different places. But as you can see, a human being very much can grow a horn from their body. People around the world do. They're not very pretty looking ones, but hey, we do. And to me, I see an extension of our relationship to what we call the ancient gods, those ancient beings. So I just wanted to share that with you, that it is very possible to have a horn on your head and be a humanoid. Hey, check this out. We just got Breaking Bigfoot traveled through time to join the Good Vibe tribe. Welcome, Breaking Bigfoot. All right, so what else do we have? Now, it's very possible and realistic, as we've seen. Okay, it's not fantasy, it's not story form, it's not a lie told to amuse children that people grow horns. That's a reality. That's a medical condition. It's not a sickness. It's not a virus. Not something wrong with these people. It's just a condition that they have. It's a part of their natural physiology. Now, this right here is a website I pulled up on wolf gods and goddesses. I highly recommend checking out many of these. I'm just going to give some of them to you as an example. We've got Artemis, Odin, Apollo. There are many wolf gods that people worshipped. They worshipped these beings that they thought looked like the wolf, right? They applied it to them. They were really light beings, beings of the light or from the light, or beings who came down from the sky. But some of them looked a little bit different than the ones we were used to seeing. So we described them as such. If you look close, it's not just the wolf either, right? This down here, this guy, this wolf creature, that could be a cat face. That could be a bat face. That could be all kinds of different faces that we put onto a grown person, a humanoid, and we call them by that. Artemis, Diana, the moon god, and wolves. Diana's, and a lot of these moon gods are also they're related to wolves as well, or they're associated with wolves, I should say. Leto, the original Greek wolf goddess. Leto, the she-wolf. Morrigan, the Celtic wolf goddess. Skadi, goddess of winter and wolves. Lycian, we've actually already talked about Lycian. Lycian, this one's actually a particular interest to me, also known as Arcadia, was a mythical king of Arcadia. The king of the arches, the high king. The king of Arcadia was turned into a wolf. We've got Lupercalia, the festival we talked about. Let's check this one out. It says in ancient Rome, there was a wild fertility festival that happened every year on February 15th. That's awfully close for a fertility festival. Awfully close to our Valentine's Day, which is all about fertility and flirting and candy and kissing and stuff like that, right? It's called Lupercalia. This festival involved a number of bawdy and lascivious acts, including men running around naked, chasing women, beating women with sticks to ensure fertility throughout the year, and animal sacrifices of goats and a dog. Interesting. Weird, but interesting. The priesthood, known as the Luperci, brothers of the wolf, were to perform these rites. This festival was put on every year until approximately the 5th century AD, when all pagan holidays and celebrations were outlawed by the church. I like how they say the church. What does this have to do with God and his association to wolves? Asks the website themselves. Interesting, right? Let's read a bit. I want to check out Romulus and Remus, because remember I was showing you that picture of the kids that were drinking the milk from the mother wolf, the she-wolf, right? Romulus and Remus, the Romans, etc. Or Romulans, same thing. Romulans, and they're all elves, okay? So if you're a Star Trek fan, like, Spock is an elf, bro. He's a space elf, boom. And Romulans are just another part of the family of elves. Anyway, if we identify the term Lupercalia, we find that Luper translates roughly to wolf, which we actually broke that down further to see what wolf really translates into, right? The ancient Romans and Greeks held wolves in high honor and regard. Why? Where did that come from? Where did that stem from? They just are dog lovers, that's all. It's the same thing, I guess you could say, like the Romans were dog lovers, the Egyptians were cat lovers, right? Same type of face on the same grown body, basically. Romulus and Remus, twin brothers associated with the founding of Rome, were said to have been orphaned by Mars, and their orphan mother then suckled by a large she-wolf in a cave known as Lupercal. Fun Harry Potter fact, there's a professor known as Remus Lupin who makes a debut appearance. Oh, that is a pretty interesting thing. Odin. Odin has a bunch of pet wolves. Apollo, the Greek wolf. Nehelenia, Celtic wolf goddess of fertility, etc., and so on and so forth. All right, sweet. I think I showed the websites I wanted to share. Yes. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and take this down. Boom. Put the picture up here for a second. I'm going to check my notes and get back on track. All right, so we talked about Lupercalia. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar also in the Bible, if like you're a big Bible reader. Nebuchadnezzar also kind of sounds like the story or transformation of a young elf or a young ancient ruler who went through some sort of an apocalyptic thing happened to him, and he turned into an animal and grew his hair out and his nails out and his claws and was eating from the ground and all this stuff. Could that be a werewolf story too? There's also a werewolf story in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where someone was turned into a wolf by a god. Let's see. So we talked about possibly the beautification technology. That's just a side theory. A sexually aggressive woman used to be known as a she-wolf. Mating seems to rank pretty high on the list of to-dos with the gods of old. They're renowned for their sexual prowess. Noted. Plasma possession and energetic spirit amplification may also apply to these beings, making them appear to be even more savage than we would have thought otherwise. Now, in today's world, let's talk about vampires. So we talked about the wolves, and we really went into a lot of detail on the wolves. Now we're going to switch gears. We're going to go specifically into vampires, and we're going to correlate the two. Okay, let me bring up my pictures here. And let me change the pictures here. Oops. One sec. Okay, cool. There we go. There's a lot of stuff on my computer screen. It's hard to navigate sometimes. Oh, Imp. I also wanted to go into Imp. Actually, you know what? I'll get to Imp in a second. I'm going to come back there. We'll just leave it on vampires. Okay, let's talk about this guy. He looks like a vampire. Actually, I want to find a better picture. Ooh, the elves. So the elves are vampires. Hold up. I'm doing a spoiler on my own channel. Nah. Okay, we'll just leave it on this guy. He's cool. All right, thanks for bearing with me while I did that. So now let's shift gears. We've talked about werewolves and the origin of that word and how it's related to immortality and the gods, because the gods are really the only ones who are immortal, beings that come down from the sky or come up from within the earth sometimes. In today's world, what is a vampire? A cartoonified caricature of an ancient truth. They are immortals. They're photophobic, which means that they are allergic to the sun. The sun hurts them. Not like they just don't like it. They're not morning people. No, they can't be under direct sunlight. They have a poor reaction to what's called holy water. They appear at times as human bats. Well, that's pretty interesting too, right? To see this elf-like creature change into something that's furry-faced, like a bat. Or humans with bat-like qualities. Batman. Also, Batman, just basically his ears are horns. So, I don't know what to say about that. They are humanoid. They're gaudy. And that's why they're called that, because they were the gods. So they are gaudy and involved in the political affairs of humans. This is vampires. They're always like that. They have something to do with politics every single time. They have their hand in the human life. Historically, they have little pigment to their white and shining skin. Oh, that's that one I wanted to take you back to. Where'd he go? Ah, there he is. So, the shining ones, just like Luper or Luca, meant to shine, all right, to illuminate, the shining beings, as do vampires, shine. They have a shine about them, right? Sparkly skin. Let's see, they feed on human blood to extend their immortality. Okay, so I mean, this is basically what happens to the vampires. They come down into this world, they're young, they're beautiful, and all of a sudden they start quickly realizing that they're aging. They want to stop it. Not all of them. Some of them don't mind. Some of them go through the aging process, but a lot of them, they're like, hey, we're hundreds of years old. Some of us are thousands. Let's figure out a way to reverse this. So, they can fly, they can float, or jump super far, however you'd like to say it. And that's because they came from a world that has a gravitational pull much like ours. And then when they enter into this brand new world, whatever the brand new world they enter into, it's going to have a weakened gravitational pull. No matter what world they go into. They could be any of them that are open at the time. If they come down into ours, the only way they can come in is by our polarity reversing, which means it goes through a neutral point. Our electromagnetics go through a neutral point, which means our gravity fails for a time till it's restored. Then once it's restored slowly and getting stronger and stronger over time. These beings came down from full-on hardcore gravity and pressure, just like we are in right now. So if you were able to survive this world and go into the next world, be it this one or some other physical place, and it has a weakened gravitational force, you're going to feel much like John Carter of Mars. Just a regular guy who got sucked into a totally different circumstance. That meant now you've got superpowers, essentially, or super strength, I should say. All right, so let's take a look at the word vampire. It starts with the hook, v, right? Actually, I'm going to do some actual screen sharing with the camera 2. Where is my camera 2? Is that camera 2? Yes, sweet. All right, cool. So let me take all this off of here. All right, now let's look at the word vampire. V-A-M-P... I wish I could do this faster with the mouse. All right, so vampire, right? Look at the word vampire. It starts with the hook. Remember I said the V, the U, the W, and sometimes the F are all that hook symbol, okay? So this is one word right there. Boom. It's a hook. The next word is or which means heavens or sky, like the Anunnaki or On of the ancient gods. On are interchangeable. They essentially mean heaven. So, of the heavens, from the sky. And then, pyre. This word sometimes is written like this. P-Y-R-E. Pyre. Which, like I said, the P sometimes makes an F sound, like in phone or phone book. We've got F-I-R-E. This word does not really mean or imply. It implies fire, but it means light. Okay? Pyre. Just like in a pyramid or a pyramid. Light amid or light on the inside. Pyramid, pyramid. Vampire. Vampire. Of the sky light. Boom. That's literally what their name means and breaks down into, right? So we've got and pyre. Let's see. The female variant. Okay, so this is also a word. Let me go back to vam. Vam. This right here is actually a word itself. While it can be broken down into two words, it's also one word. Now this is the female version of von. And von means of thee. Sometimes you see it in people's names like von Liechtenstein or von de Kamp or whatever you want to say, right? It means of, right? Related to or from the light. From the light. Von pyre. Vampire. From the light in the sky, etc. That's what vampire means. Interesting, right? So, we've got pyre like a funeral pyre, right? Same thing, a funeral light. Pyromania, somebody who's obsessed with fire. So altogether, the word vampire translates to from the heavenly light or from the light, or other such implications by extension, like the shining ones. Vampire, umpire, empire, emperor, imp for short, and ump are all words that share the same roots and convey the same ideas that come with the thought of these beings, the ruling beings, the ones who are in charge or directly influencing humanity. All right, let's go back to our regular one here. Boom. All right, so thanks for sharing that with me. Oh, that's cool. I like going to camera 2. I totally forgot about camera 2. So we're talking about vampires. These beings consider themselves blessed to be young, and they fear the aging process. This is an imp, by the way. The imp, do you see how the imp has horns? I mean, you can kind of see it because I'm in the way, but the imp has horns on it and pointy ears. That's what happens. The imp is a European mythological being similar to a fairy or a demon because they're all the same. They're all the same types of creatures and stuff. We give them different names and stuff. And there's different subclasses and stuff like that. But man, frequently described in folklore and superstition. The word may perhaps derive from the term yimp, used to denote a young grafted tree. A tree that's been grafted in, right? So there's some kind of a family meaning there. Imps are often described as troublesome and mischievous, more than seriously threatening or dangerous, and lesser beings rather than more important supernatural beings. The attendants of the devil are sometimes described as imps. Interesting. This right here is from the movie Dr. Sleep. Okay, so this is your classic vampire. Now, they didn't give them pointy teeth or anything because they didn't have to. Because vampires don't suck blood out of the teeth. Like, that used to be a thing people believed, that vampires had, like, needle teeth, like snakes or something, and they just sucked stuff into it or whatever. No, that's not how it works. So they didn't decide to put pointy teeth on this woman right here because she's a young vampire. She's a kid. She's a child. And you know what? It makes me laugh when we think about all these different gods that people worship that probably ended up just being kids, children. Actually, you know what it reminds me of? The movie Explorers from the 90s, where these kids were able to make a UFO of their own. They flew right out into space, they got sucked up by a tractor beam, and they met the alien beings. And they were trying to pick their brains and talk to them and stuff. The whole time, it turns out these alien beings that were super advanced were just kids, like, who ran away from home, and their huge parents came in. Anyways, it's a cool movie. All right, where was I? So these beings consider themselves blessed to be young and fear the aging process, so they develop alternative ways of keeping their youth, avoiding the curse, or the old age, of the werewolf. The curse of the old age within the world that they're trapped in until they make their escape back into the heavens. That's how they can guarantee that they'll stop aging, okay, as they get back into the heavens. They are tasked with watching over humanity, and although rarely seen by the general public, they are seen far more than their elder counterparts. Humanity admired their youthful glow, muscular physique, long hair, short pointy ears, big eyes, etc. And they had won over much of humanity. Hey, Drew L just donated. It says he hopes I'm good. Hey, thanks, Drew. Thank you, man. Everything will be good. I've got to keep a good positive mindset. So, hey, thank you so much for your support. So I just want to show you this picture of this witch, okay, who has pointy ears, big old nose, long fingers, okay? So it doesn't mean that just because they hit puberty that they have to look like super hairy. I mean, if you get super hairy, don't you sometimes cut it off? Right? Don't you sometimes want to look younger, so you shave and stuff? Yeah, I'm sure these beings probably have done that too. Some are for it, some are against it, just like we are, I would imagine. So, these beings, when they were younger, won over much of humanity. We wanted to look like them, live like them, and be like them. We were starstruck by the stars, or the beings from the stars, the first real stars. They either found ways to keep their youthful glow, so adored by the population, and thus their popularity and ease of life, or they lost popularity, growing old and ugly. They drank the life essence of pure and innocent beings as a way of temporarily extending their youthful lifespans. This was known but ignored by the general public, often portrayed as a sacrifice the common good would make to be in good graces of these beings. They would make this sacrifice for these beings who had immense power and influence over them. That sounds to me a lot like the Dark Crystal story, right? There's those little tiny human-like beings or whatever, and then you got the Skeksis. And the people allow the Skeksis to literally take some of them and steal their life as a sort of tribute or sacrifice for everybody else. That's humanity. That's us. These are things we believed in. It doesn't mean that as we go back in time, we were all stupid. It just means that these are the things that we thought were real at the time. And I believe these are things that have breadcrumbs of reality to them. And that's why they've survived. That's why they're so popular in our movies, our books, our other genres, where we can think about these things without looking ridiculous. Where we can ponder and be philosophers about the roots and the origins of what we consider to be the fantastic. Why does a vampire look like a magician? Because a vampire is a magical being. They are the magicians, the magic beings. That's why they look like that. They dress like that. They either found ways to keep their glow alive or they lost their popularity. This was known, but it was accepted by most of the population. Relationships between the youthful and the aging was always a hot topic. The DNA of the aging, seen as degraded, it was taboo to intermingle in the interest of preserving the DNA for as long as possible, extending life for as long as possible for every generation. They're photophobic because they are from outside of our sky, and they're not used to the direct rays of the sunlight. It hurts them as it does us, but much faster. Many creatures from outside of this world, animal or humanoid, have been described as fair-skinned or having a shiny white appearance. Because of their photophobia, they did venture out into the sunlight, and they made sure it was with an umbrella to keep in the shade, gloves, sunglasses, collars popped, not for status, but to keep the sun off of their necks. And we still emulate them today with these symbols of a forgotten time. Now, I showed you the Umbrella Academy slide there, right? I hope you made the correlation. But then inside of the Umbrella Academy show, if you've ever seen it, one of these girls, she's like the most powerful one. Her name is Vanya. Van. The Vanir. She represents the Vanir, the Van, the beautiful ones, etc. Of course, there's the Umbrella Corporation, right? Then you've got guys like this, right? Guys like this who went around walking with a top hat, pale, pasty white skin, big nose, probably pointy ears. I don't know if they put those on him or not. And then he's got the spiral symbol and the umbrella all right there in front of you. And we wonder where they came up with this stuff. These are the vampires. You could call it a family name. Vampire. Right? Of the light. They are the Van or the Vanir. Or if you said it in English, it would be Vans in plural. That's why your shoes are called that, by the way. While it literally means from the heavens, as we've noted, for mankind it came to be associated with our standard of beauty. Van now means beautiful. They are the elegant, youth-filled immortals in charge of the world, doing the work of the elders who remain hidden mostly in comfort. Mostly there are, of course, with exceptions. Some of my afterthoughts on vampires. Hold on. We'll just leave it right there. Some of my afterthoughts on vampires. They have superhero and supervillain-like powers, as do werewolves. This is in part due to them leaving a blue world and entering into a red one, where they would have amplified strength and other attributes, as our own survivors do. But those who are born into that world would be weak in comparison due to the different living conditions under the different colored skies. If they came from a red sky, they may not be as powerful, but they would likely be much larger. So if they didn't have their power, their superhuman power, whatever, they might be extra gigantic to make up for it, basically. The ability to breed may be different for a seemingly immortal being. That reminds me, let's go back a few steps here. I skipped through this one. The ability to breed. This is why I'm showing you Beauty and the Beast, okay? For example, a young elf of 200 years old might be able to have sex, but they're not able to bear children yet. There likely exist within that society various taboos, just like we have within our own, about relationships between houses and with mortals, etc. Just as the elders may resemble the appearance of various animals, or specifically attributes of certain animals. That one's making me dizzy. Let's get that one off there. Whew. Just gonna go back to the other one. Oh, this one's kind of cool though. I'm gonna leave it on that one. Where was I? Let's see. Oh, just as the elders may resemble the appearance of various animals, or specifically attributes of certain animals, for example, rabbits. When you see rabbits portrayed as human but with long ears and stuff like that, right? Donnie Darko comes to mind. So too may those in their prime resemble a bat, aka a scruffy face, the nose getting bigger, ears getting longer, wearing capes to keep the sun off of them, and they can fly or jump super far or fall with style, however you want to say it. Either by technology or taking on the appearance of flying, by just jumping really high or in a weakened gravitational electromagnetic force. It's not uncommon that we imagine the gods as being part human and part animal. We describe their visage according to what we are familiar with, which is animals. The fish gods, because of the shining skin. The reptile gods, the same reason and predatory nature. The wolf gods, etc. In the Dark Crystal, they're portrayed as giant vultures, concerned with staying young and beautiful, or the aging mystics who left the outward standard to find inner beauty and enlightenment. A bat's face looks like a wolf's, if you ever take a look at it. The vampire turn into bats, as may vampires turn into bats. What about a cat? There's the movie Cats. There's cat worship. There's fear of cats. In the show Love, Death, and Robots, like that's a whole theme. These cats end up ruling the world. Like they end up taking over. They even scare Dracula, the vampire. A cat. Why would a cat scare a vampire? You know what I mean? Unless it reminds him of something he shouldn't mess with, like his elders. What else do we got? Oh, and also keep in mind, we have a tailbone, and sometimes these beings are said to have tails. So can you imagine like how that would even add to the caricature of our memory, the cartoonification of an ancient truth, if they've really actually had tails and they start growing hair? Right? This is also the reason why Belle hooks up with the beast. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to go back to that one. The beast is not an animal. He's an anthropod. Like Ender, like Ender's Game. Ender just means human. Ender's Game, Andrew, android. All those words. He's an anthropod, human-like, which means that they are technically compatible. It's also why werewolves can mate with vampires, because they're relatives, as are we with our brothers and sister counterparts in the sky. That's my presentation for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. What I'd like to do is jump into the chat. Oh, I like this picture too. I wanted to share this one because I would like to keep in mind while I do talk about the monsters of the world or the monsters of ancient times that were discussed and talked about, I don't like to cast them all into a negative light. I don't like to just say, oh, it's a vampire, therefore bad. We literally have movies about good vampire anomalies. I don't like to say just because it's a wolf-looking, hairy, strong creature thing that it's going to kill me. Now, if it starts acting like that, I will be cautious and stuff if I ever were to come upon these things. But there's clearly some kind of affection here between these beings that were worshipped by humanity and us. There's some kind of love. There's some kind of care. But then there's always the other side that sees the opposite. So that's my presentation on werewolves and vampires. We talked about the etymology, the word origins. We talked about a few different stories and correlations and stuff like that. What do you guys think? Did you get something good out of the video today? I'm going to jump in the chat, pop it open. I haven't seen the chat this whole time. I'll have to actually go back and watch the video when the chat's posted. So, hey, what do you guys think? Are you having a good time? Did you learn some stuff? Was it good to watch? Can I talk more about cats? Says cloud gazing. Yeah, what do you want to know about cats? Like, I did talk some about cats. You're going to have to guide me on that one. I don't know what you want to hear. Basically, there's all this cat worship, okay? We anthropomorphize various things, okay? We give human-like attributes to things that are not human, and we give not human-like attributes to things that are. I believe it falls to us to reverse engineer these stories and ask ourselves things legitimately, realistically. Why do Egyptians revere the cat? Why are they seen as such holy creatures? And why dogs in other cultures? Where does this root in our collective consciousness or subconsciousness? All right, well, I'm glad you guys had a good time. I hope you guys have checked out my little ticker here, that you'll want to go and check out my book. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but I do want to thank everyone for your donations. I have lost custody of my son because I have read him my book. So, I'm not sure how much detail I can get into about all of it right now because it's still kind of ongoing, but needless to say, as a very proud father, I am battling some heartbreak and stuff, but I'm trying to remain hopeful as I do what I can to do what's right and teach my son the things that I've taught you all for so long. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I love you. Enjoy the outro and stuff, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week. Leave some sweet comments if you think of some cool connections too, because I do go over the comments, and I like seeing what you guys have to add to the pot. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.